Lincoln.
Hello. Hello. Hi. Good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hi, this is Vibhor Srivastava.
Hi, this is Richie. Hi, Mr. Lincoln.
Hi, Rakesh.
Hi, Mr. Rakesh. Hi, Harun.
Hi, Jayshree.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We are hosting for developers, which is like coming back with a bang. This is Jayshree Mendes. I'm the editor of Construction Week. Joining me are my colleagues Vibhor Srivastava, the group publishing director, the one in the center. And we have Indrajit Sahuji, who's the director for ITP Publishing and also for the Construction Week magazine. As a magazine, we've been in India for 11 years. We are an international magazine, international company based out in India. And it's a Dubai-based company. It's a British company based out of Dubai. And we have several other titles. So we have 6 other titles besides this, all related to various sectors. And today in our webinar, we are going to explore the markets. Okay, so Rohit Poddar has come in. So today we are going to explore about how developers are facing this pandemic, what's happening in the real estate market, different markets. So each of you from different areas, you know, like we have Rakesh from South and Lincoln from Goa. We have Harun from Bombay, Rohit Poddar based out of Bombay. So we have Rohit Poddar also who's joined us. Shall I read out, shall I introduce everybody through designations?
Sure.
We have Rohit Poddar, who's the MD for Poddar Housing and Development. He's also the Joint Secretary for Naredco Maharashtra. We have Harun Siddiqui, Vice President, Corporate Head MEP for Rustomjee Group. And we have Lincoln Bennett Rodrigues, Founder and Chairman, Bennett and Bernard Group, based out of Goa.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will speak about the strategies of making a comeback in this difficult market. No one alive today has experienced this kind of pandemic earlier, and it's really difficult to collect ourselves and present strategies on how to make a comeback in this difficult time. My name is Indrajit Sahuji. I head the design and construction vertical for ITP in India, and I'll be your host for today. Before we begin with the webinar, I would like to know if the audio and video are clear, and if any issues with communication, do let me know so that we can sort it out soon. You can highlight it in the chat as well. In case if you have any questions during the course of this session, please feel free to ask them by using the question tab on your left, on your top left corner of your screen. We have a Q&A session towards the end, and we have kept a 10-minute session for Q&A towards the end of this session. In between, you can post your questions in the Q&A section. My team and I are looking forward to all the questions. We have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, as I mentioned. We'll try to answer as many queries as possible in the limited time. Now, Jayshree has already introduced the panel. And without further ado, I would like Jayshree to take over and start the panel.
Hello. I would like each one of you answer this, considering that you all come from different markets. The first question was this. My first question to all the panelists, we could start with Lincoln. The state of the real estate market in Goa today, and how do you foresee? I mean, what has it been in the last 1 or 2 years, and how do you foresee it going after this pandemic?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me on the panel. Bennett and Bernard, I'll rather take you into the real estate, what is happening in Goa for the last 2 years. The market in Goa has been, in fact, pretty good. It's been quite averaging out in the last 2 years. I would think Bennett and Bernard, being in the luxury segment, we have seen our position go from strength to strength, and it's been a good ride right through before the crisis. I see it moving forward after the crisis, after the pandemic crisis that we have at hand right now, that things will start to pick up. In fact, all the more. Goa being a small state, geographically, I think we're very well managed. I don't see us taking a lot of hit, but it's been a good reset button for us, in fact, to calibrate, get down to our drawing table. And the queries and inquiries that have come in, the most important note that most of our clients or queries that call us in speak about, they said, we wish we were quarantined in Goa. and that's a pleasant surprise. They all wish that they were quarantined in Goa, and yes, Goa is a beautiful state. So I don't really see it a big issue in terms of real estate, at least for the luxury segment in Goa. I think we should be better and better moving forward.
Rakesh, could you tell us about the Hyderabad market?
Yeah. Hi to all the fellow panelists and people who have logged in. Hyderabad market was having one of the best years in the last 24 to 26 months, because we had seen a big barren patch from 2009 all the way to 2014, from the financial crisis to the state agitation and finally the split. So all of that pent-up demand was shown in the last 2.5 years, which is why Hyderabad was the best performing city, metro in India. So this COVID-19 has come in at, I would say, a very bad time for us, because we are doing really well and we expected this year to be better than last year. And then this come in and everything has just come to a stop for the last 25-30 days or so. So, but having said that, Hyderabad also has one of the lowest inventories in India currently, about 18 to 20 months. So I expect that once this is sorted out and the lockdown is lifted and people get back to business, maybe not business as usual, but at least get used to the fact that this is how it's going to be in the next 12 to 18 months until people find out a vaccine for this. It should get back to normal. Maybe a U-shaped 3 to 4 months of no or slow business, and then after that it should be back.
Okay. Rohit, maybe you can speak for all of us, and then afterwards Haroon can speak for all of the rest of us Mumbaiites on how the market has been.
So Mumbai, as you know, has got many different segments in the market. It's got residential, different bands of residential, luxury, mid-income housing, and also low-income housing. We also have a large industrial sector, including warehousing, and commercial, and also hospitality, including hotels, restaurants, and also malls and retail. So I would basically say that before January and February of this year, which are actually two very exceptional months for most people across the board, since demonetization, the Bombay market's been sluggish, specifically for the luxury sector in residential. Mid-income housing has been doing well, and so is affordable housing. It's been sort of an all-weather sort of player, but numbers haven't been as great as the years before. Retail has been doing pretty well. We had a great year in commercial last year, as you know, probably our best year in many, many years. Industrial also did very well. Jan and Feb were actually fantastic months this year across the luxury developers did well. Affordable housing developers did outstanding. Retail did well. I mean, everything did well across the board. And we were kind of hoping for a big revival before this coronavirus. COVID-19 has actually hit us pretty badly. How badly it hits us, we'll have to basically wait and see. But my view is the same as Sri Deepak Parikh's view, that we'll take a good 2.5 to 3 quarters to actually recover. And basically, the industry as a whole will probably recover well from board of this financial year. I think affordable housing will recover first because of the fact that people have realized three fundamental things. Number one, people have lost 50% of their long-term savings, which have been invested through SIPs and mutual funds. So anybody who's lost up to 50% of their value in 4 weeks has had a big shock in their system. People aren't trusting banks because of what's happened with PMC, PNB, Yes Bank, and so on and so forth. Also, the interest rates basically for deposits are coming further and further down. 3, you've got all-time low and going lower home loan rate, which is for demand for sure. And fourthly, people have realized that the house was kept them protected, during this difficult time. So families that were actually joint families will see more and more nuclear families rent or buy their own place in the short term or the medium term. So all in all, I expect affordable housing to be slightly sluggish for the next 2 or 3 months until people start getting out and the fear of coronavirus becomes less and mass herd immunity has happened somewhat in some way. I don't expect coronavirus to go away unless there's a global vaccine, and to produce even vaccines of the 8 billion people, or even to take 60% of that, 5 billion people. So it's going to take a lot of doing, because capacities are simply not there globally to make these many vaccines. I expect commercial rentals to come down 10 or 15, 20%. Luxury will definitely be impacted the worst because it was actually discretionary spends or sort of upgrading spending or rental buyer going and buying luxury. I think e-commerce will do fantastically well because of home deliveries and people putting health and safety as a primary objective. So I think home deliveries will do well and e-commerce will do very well. So I think the warehousing sector is here to stay. I'm not sure whether the numbers will increase from a rental perspective, but I think capacities will definitely increase. So this is by and large the overview across the various sectors. We didn't talk about retail. I expect malls to become fuller in the medium term because people will gravitate towards cleanliness and safety. And a mall is basically cleaner than a kirana dukan outside. So I think that with social distancing and with norms to create health and safety within a mall, people will gravitate towards a cleaner and safer environment than not. Thank you.
Thank you. Harun, you have several ongoing projects for Rustomjee in Bombay. How would you look at completing projects considering that, buyers have been a little reluctant nowadays, and also the market, the market people are not willing to shell out money, or the banks have been, hesitant to lend developers. How would you look at completing projects in time and convincing buyers?
First thing, what I felt very good in this discussion is that everybody, Rohit and my friend from Hyderabad and Goa, they all are very positive. So we should celebrate this. All this negativity, what will happen, this is a very positive thing. What Rohit has actually covered most of the aspects for the Bombay market. But one thing I want to say, who had predicted, who had even thought that the whole world will be paused, not one city, one country, whole world, almost whole world is paused, and all the airlines are parked. So this is very uncertain. So like after this uncertainty also, there are predictions. Who will buy the homes? People will lose the job. People will lose the businesses. But my prediction and my gut feeling is that after this pandemic is over, and hopefully in India by end of May, we will see some movement in the market. And whatever the projects are going on, the RERA is already indicated that they will give the time extension. And whatever the balance inventory is there, so I am sharing my personal experience with you. Since I had spent a long term in Dubai and Middle East, so many people are calling me, and their first thing is that, यार अभी तो इंडिया में घर लेने का, बॉम्बे में या दिल्ली में, अपना country अपना ही होता. This is the NRI market who are saying. And some of people who are residing in the congested localities and the old localities, earlier their thought was that we will not shift from here because we like this place. But now they want to shift to the suburbs like Thane and other places. And people are going to the gated community, where in this type of scenario, you have all the facilities. So like Rohit had said, the retail malls, that is the one sector. But while planning our ongoing projects also, we are trying to accommodate some more retail areas, because people want a hygienic saloon. They don't want the clubhouse, luxurious clubhouse and the marble and the gym and this, because all these things had become obsolete during this time. And what is for the real estate, what is the big positivity in this crisis is, and we should take this, because when you are having all the facilities, you don't value them. You have a car, you switch on, you start and you start moving. But when the car is not getting started and some trouble, then you know the value of the car. Same thing is happening. Only vaccine available for this pandemic COVID-19 is the only vaccine till now available. You have to be at home. That is the vaccine. And people had felt the importance of the home. And now they are realizing they should have the good home with the good facilities, gated communities, retail areas, open spaces, and all other things. But Rohit has already mentioned it. So I am very optimistic and hopeful that this year, with all these happenings, and real estate before this COVID also, real estate was in Mumbai especially was facing a tough time. Mm-hmm. It was going on, and now at this moment we should be very positive. And as a Rustomjee, we are committed to complete all the ongoing projects, and whatever the lesson and learns from this pandemic and this crisis, we will try to implement on our ongoing projects and transfer the benefits to the customers.
Rakesh, can I ask you? I mean, we always been here that among all the markets that have been doing well, it was the Chennai market that was performing extremely well.
Hyderabad.
Yeah, I mean, touch wood, okay. But the thing is that how
I would hope to be in Chennai soon as well.
No, I'm asking because the southern market. So I'm asking the southern market. So if the Chennai market, the Coimbatore market has been doing well. Developers from Bangalore and Hyderabad also have been stepping into the Chennai market. What is it about? What is the stats about the Chennai market that has attracted more buyers there as compared to neighboring regions in the south?
It's the buyers. The main thing is Chennai and the surrounding suburbs, which is full of industrial belts, have always been net employment generators there, right? And then Chennai itself has very little land in terms of for expansion purposes, because it's already surrounded by sea from one side, so it can only expand on the other side. And within the city itself, there are a lot of restrictions in terms of the heights of the buildings, the FSI restrictions. So that has caused people to move into the suburbs, and then as you go into the suburbs, you have a lot of these industrial activities that are happening, and obviously the kind of houses that people are building there are suitable for people working within those belts. One is industrial, one is IT. Again, Mahindra and the others are big there. So that's also one attraction for customers, buyers. So two segments really. One is the affordable segment, and one is for the middle and upper middle. So middle and upper middle with the IT guys, and the affordable for the guys who are working in the industrial belts. Right. Same with Coimbatore as well. I mean, that's the story in Tamil Nadu per se. So you have these 4, 5, 6 of these cities that are surrounded by these industrial clusters that have always seen the need for good housing, and then when you have this proper product, people are willing to buy.
And how does Hyderabad figure in all this?
So for Hyderabad, it's predominantly IT and pharma, and both have been doing phenomenally well in the last 3-4 years, especially commercial market. I mean, Rohit was mentioning some time back on the commercial for Mumbai. Hyderabad was one of the best performing commercial markets last year. It's even bet Bangalore to the task, right? So all of this would translate into latent residential demand going forward, which is why I'm fairly confident and bullish as far as the Hyderabad market is concerned, combined with the low inventory that's already there.
Okay, so is that the luxury segment or the affordable and the mid-market segment?
So again, the affordable definition changes by city, right? So what is luxury in Hyderabad would typically fall probably slightly above affordable in Mumbai. But for us, what is luxury would then probably be something like for the upper middle in Mumbai again, right? Yeah, but as far as Hyderabad is concerned, luxury market is a very small proportion of the overall market, hardly 10 to 12%. Rest of it is for the upper middle class, then the affordable segment. So affordable segment, middle and upper middle will continue to do well with bracket sizes of up to 1 to 1.2 crores. You go beyond that, you're stretching it a bit. And then in the current market, maybe it's a little tough to sell unless you're a brand name in the city.
Yeah. Indresh, I'd like to ask a next question to Haroon.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions coming from the audience as well. So there is one very interesting question that has popped up. So I would like to ask this question first, and it's relevant to what we are discussing now. This is by Adarsh Patel, and he is asking if the situation remains same for long, more than 6 months, how the developers will survive by paying for material, labor, and salaries while not getting a single penny during this pandemic, as business was bad since last 2 years and developers are already in debts. So any one of you can take this question. It's a pain point for all of us, in fact.
I think we should start with Rohit first. Rohit and Haroon, because both are Bombay market and both are facing those major challenges as compared to Lincoln and Rakesh.
Yes, sure.
Basically, my view is that whichever developer constructs through the monsoon will actually win by the season that starts in post the monsoon, which is the festive season in Mumbai. So you have to be well capitalized and have debt lines available from your lenders. Our lenders are principally HDFC Capital, HDFC Limited, and a few others. So we've already tied up with, we already have lines of credit available for us to construct. And also we are pretty well capitalized in our escrow and DSRA accounts. So we don't see any problem in continuing construction or restarting construction as soon as the lockdown is actually ending. we were hoping to start construction actually on Monday of this week, which is the day before yesterday. Because
Okay.
we got the notification for starting construction, because we have labor camps across all our sites. Labor's been very well taken care of over the last 4 weeks. But then we got a reversal of that order as well from the Thane collector and from the MCGM in Mumbai as well.
Okay.
So now we're not allowed to start construction, and I think most likely they will review this only on the 1st of May, and probably start only once the lockdown is removed on the 3rd of May. The SIP is not extended further. So the bottom line is that construction will continue. I mean, I know Rustomjee Group very well. Both the brothers are very good friends of mine. So I can tell you that they'll also have enough backing from, we're the same lenders basically, from HDFC Capital and HDFC Limited. We have common people working for each other's companies also. So we know each other's companies very well. They're a very well established and reliable brand, and they have a large customer following and loyalty as well. They also, like us, a pretty ethical developer. So I think for the larger developers in Mumbai who are branded, deadlines are available to construct. What will actually happen, unfortunately, is that what's already been happening for the last 3 years, that you have a consolidation in the industry because it's all been led by who's financially solvent and who's a brand. And ultimately that decides, whether you can sell or not. So the next 6 months will actually contract the market even further between the men and the sort of also rans, unfortunately. And it's all driven by the brand promise, the brand performance over the last 5-10 years, and being well capitalized and having deadlines to construct.
Well said, Rohit, because these our lenders are mostly common, what the Podar Group and the Rustomjee Group. But we are committed to restart the construction. In fact, we were ready with all plans to construct, because I can say very proudly as a Rustomjee Group, when this pandemic starts, we are arranging foods and all other necessary items for the laborers which are at our sites. And we are not treating them as a contractor's labor. We are taking care of all those things. And we are working hand in hand with the government and what we can do. And one perception is there in everybody's mind. जब builder की बात होती है कि कोई भी builder है तो कोई भी सोचता है कुछ भी करके ये तो काम निकाल लेगा. एक ऐसा perception है. And then during this crisis, we are working with the government, we are working with the people, we are caring for the labor. The government will also come with some packages, not very big 20, 30 point package, maybe 10, 12 point package will be the bigger relief. And I am confident that once the picture clears after 3rd May and something starts, so definitely we will bounce back and complete whatever the plan. And it may be delay will be there, and RERA has already accepted that delays, but the things will move in positive direction.
Yeah.
Lincoln, would you like to answer from the Goa perspective about demand for housing projects?
Yeah, like I said, to answer to your question about the demand moving forward in the real estate sector for Goa, there has been. We did think that we're going to have a little bit of a quieter phase. We just checked on our clients for their well-being in the last few days, but we've been quite surprised to know there have been quite good inquiries for Goa. And again, among all the participants on the panel, I think Bennett & Bernard is one of the smallest companies with the smallest inventory since we are into luxury homes, and we're just doing practically maybe around about 3-4 projects a year. I do see a surge. I think as soon as we have domestic and international travel ban opened up, I'm definitely going to see a lot of people wanting to come to Goa, definitely from India, because I think Goa is one of the best destinations for people in India, at least to travel if they don't want to travel international.
Rakesh?
Yeah. You'd want me to answer on...
Yes, the Adesh's question on how developers are going to manage, considering that banks are, not willing to lend, and how are you looking at it? How are you?
Mendes, just before going to Rakesh, I want to add one thing.
Sure.
Which I want to share, that there is a crisis, there is a fund crunch, everything is there, but there is one thing, trust, which in this crisis, all the builders, Lodha, Rustomjee, Podar, all the builders which I know are doing pretty good in this scenario, and that trust is there. And when trust is there, the lenders will definitely give their helping hand to revive the projects. So there is no need to panic, and if we keep on thinking negatively, how, then it is not good. I am very positive in this. We will have the help from the government, financial institutions, banks, and all other stakeholders, and the trust from the customers also. Over to Rakesh. Rakesh,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. So there are two aspects to this. One is obviously managing labor. Right now we have more than 5,000 laborers across our sites sitting idly in Hyderabad and Bangalore. So how and what happens post the lockdown in terms of public transportation that's going to be made available for these people to move about if they wish to go back to their places. And then if it is made available or not. If it is not made available, then it's not easy for these guys to go back. So it will be easier for us to retain them and get the construction work going. But even if it is made available, how do we, work with our contractors and manage this situation? Possibly breaking them down into batches and then sending them, in manageable numbers so that the work doesn't suffer once the lockdown is lifted. The second aspect, obviously, is the financial aspect. So the most important thing right now is liquidity management. So as long as the balance sheet is not stressed, and like Harunji said, if you have enough trust with your customers and they continue to pay, make the payments based on the progress linkages, I think we should be able to write this out smoothly.
I would like to further add to the previous questions while we are going through this tough time. It's like, how do you procure expensive goods for your luxury project specifically? Like, what are the plans?
First of all, for any developer to complete the balance projects, we have to change the strategy. What earlier schedules were there, and now first thing is to complete the pre-monsoon activities, which is very much important from the Mumbai perspective. And as far as the expensive material is concerned, so definitely it may be delayed for some time, and there will be some renegotiations because the market is very down, and all for the construction industries in and around 250 to 260 industries are depending upon us, and we are the major chunk in contributing to the financial sector. So many industries are developing to us. So we are looking forward to our vendors also, other stakeholders also, and there will be some renegotiation of the rates and the delivery schedule, and probably change of specs also with this scenario.
Okay.
So that because in this time, for all those projects, like we are having our very landmark project in the South Mumbai Crown, that is the luxury segment. All these like lifts delivery, how it will be, because everything is linked. No? Lifts are coming from China, Finland, and whole world is this. So then we have to remap all those schedules, specification, something we have to change, something we have to renegotiate, and most important, last but not the least, payment terms.
Payment terms, correct.
Because they have to adjust with the current scenario. We cannot behave like what we had agreed earlier, and this needs to be renegotiated in terms of cost and the payment terms.
Okay, there are many vendors watching this.
This is a very. This is the situation.
True. Agreed.
This is the situation.
It's very important that we have a spirit of partnership across the value chain of product. Whether it's a customer buying product, whether it's a developer, whether it's the suppliers, RMC plant manufacturers, or fit out manufacturers, we have to basically work in a partnership, in a spirit of partnership, to get through this together. Please remember that the developer can't finish the project, the entire supply chain basically fails, and there's one less person to actually supply to. So it's very important to have not negotiation on hard negotiation, but to understand the reality of the marketplace today. To have open communications very transparently and honestly, and discuss interesting means of basically getting through this together. If we take an adversarial position with customers or with our vendors, then we will not get through this in the correct manner. So I would request all vendors and customers to work with the entire chain, including developers, in the spirit of partnership to get through this to get through this time. Thank you.
Very well said. Link, would you like to take this? Hello.
I think connection is not.
Yeah, probably. Rakesh, you can take it meanwhile.
I mean, Rohit and Mr. Harun had made most of the points. I mean, what I would just add is that there should be a spirit of reasonableness between all the parties concerned, between the developers and the customers, between the developers and the suppliers, between the developers and the banks. So if you can just adhere to it and then try and understand each other's point of view and where we are coming from, I think we should be able to get through. If you're not reasonable and then try and push too hard, then the repercussions will be there for all.
True, true. Lincoln, can you join in now? And like, is the line clear?
They're trying to they're doing some troubleshooting, so they're waiting for him to come back.
Just I want to add one thing to what Rakesh is telling. Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
I want to just add one thing to this. There is no point in taking opportunities out of this crisis, unreasonable opportunities. So the industry as a whole, nation as a whole, and the world as a whole has a challenge. And we had accepted this challenge. We are fighting together, and we have to win together. So all vendors, all consultants, all stakeholders are part of the one team only, and they are facing the same trouble. So
Very
to
well said.
overcome this and to win the things, financial part, completion part, and to the customer satisfaction, everybody has to understand each other's problems and then some solution. It is not like that, somebody is thinking it is a crisis and market is down, so I will ask somebody to you slash your price. You instead of 120 days, you go to the 6 month, 1 year payment. No, it is not like that. We all should be very reasonable, and there should be a strong collaboration. And I think this crisis, one positive thing, this crisis will give it also us. Everybody must have felt that there is more humanity in the world now. The people are thinking for others more now. And professionally also, I feel that everybody will be more realistic, and a human approach should be there. Because our contractors whose labors are 4,000 labor, like Rakesh mentioned, 5,000 labors are there. We have also thousands and thousands labor. So these all families are ultimately depending upon us, whether it is a supplier, whether it is a developer, whether it is a contractor. So everybody should live to the expectations and what is required to do. So it is nothing to take the opportunity out of the crisis. Absolutely big no to that.
Very rightly
Yes,
said.
Indrajit. Yes.
Very rightly said. Very rightly said. Means like we should work as a team. I guess Vibhor has a question. Means like Vibhor, can you come in?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
All right. I think so far, absolutely a very devouring session that we had. And I think it's a need of the hour to step up as a humanitarian aspect of it and collaboration of it. But having said that, India by virtue has a great legacy and a great history. So my question to each panelist would be, what is that we can inculcate from the past, and what is that we would like to adopt from the West?
Can you repeat, please?
I said, what is that we can take from our past, and what is that we can take from the West? We have a strong heritage, strong history, as a nation, as an entrepreneurship or anything. What is that we can take it from the past?
So should I answer this question?
Yeah, Rohit, please welcome.
Okay, so it's a very interesting question actually, and thank you for asking this question. It's very relevant in today's time. We've all been sitting at home now for the last 1 month almost, in Maharashtra slightly longer. And we've always, other than having numerous Google Hangout and Zoom meetings with all our colleagues and customers and industry bodies and governing ministers, there's been time to introspect on what is it that we want out of our own lives and what is it that we want to have as a fair and just society. So I personally feel that our Itihas has a lot to give us actually in a positive manner. If you look at the Indian GDP contribution before the British got here, we were, more than 25%. And why was that? Why was that the case? I'll give you a small example, okay? And since Rakesh is from Hyderabad, he'll understand what I'm saying. Let's say, for example, in the past, we had a tradition of going to a temple, as an example, or a mosque, or a church, right? What was the principle of going to these places? Right? So we should understand what that real principle was, rather than being religious to go back to spirituality in many ways, in shapes and forms. Okay. So point number one. Point number two, when you say holistic living, what does holistic living actually mean? It means that you put your health first. You eat well, you sleep well, you practice meditation, you do some yoga, you do namaz, whatever, you go to church, whatever these things are that our spirituality has taught us. These are very important to our well-being. Mental well-being, spiritual well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being. When we have a holistic well-being as a way of living our life, then we are healthy human beings with high immunity, right? If we have high immunity, viruses will hurt us a lot less, right? You may say a slum dweller in Mumbai has got higher immunity, as an example, because of the conditions in which they live. But there are many ways in achieving high immunity, including the ways I just mentioned before. So if we develop high immunity through the way we eat, through the way we live, through the way we speak, through our thoughts, through our actions, then a lot of these diseases that are going to be coming in future also will affect us a lot less as a nation. Point number one. Point number two, what can we learn from the West? Innovation, science, technology, adhering to timelines, keeping one's word. These are things that we all had in our past as a tradition, but we seem to have forgotten them. And the West has taken over these ways of being efficient and actually delivering. If you look at India's position in the manufacturing sector, we're some 3% of the world's economy. I think China's some 27, 28%. There's 9 times as much as they're 9 times a bigger manufacturing economy than we have. Now, why is that? We need to understand manufacturing doesn't go from one place to the other based on somebody's whims and fancies, but capital finds allocation in the most effective manner if you believe in free economics. So why is it that China's got 9 times more manufacturing than we are, when in the 60s and 70s we were in fact ahead of China? So you have to introspect as a nation to figure out if you want manufacturing in India, if you want Make in India, then what are the conditions that will allow that to come to this country in a correct manner? Now, there's a backlash against China for COVID-19, which there clearly is. What is it that we can do as a nation to attract capital, talent, people, technology to our shores, and make sure that we are willing to do whatever it takes to make India a manufacturing hub? So I think this learning is very important at this point of time. We have a great tradition as well in the recent past of forgetting things. We bounce back very quickly, which is a very big trait. But very often in this bouncing back, we forget about learnings that we've actually had to make and mistakes that we've actually made as well. I remember post the bomb blasts in the railway bogies, we were back to work in 48 hours. Post 9/11, we were back to work in 3 days' time. When Mumbai was burning, we were back to work in maximum 1 week's time, right? These are all great traits that we must go on. But very often I feel that the mistakes that have been made in the past and the learnings that we can make get forgotten in the will to move ahead. And in that we continue with the spirit of jugaad, and we don't make structural changes that are important for our economy. So I think we must understand from the West what capital allocation really needs. And we should implement those as soon as possible so that we can grab a share of manufacturing and really Make in India can be a reality. Thanks.
I think it's very well said. Moving on to Mr. Reddy, I think it's very, very laid out. Really bring alive the history, the strong legacy that we have. And Mr. Reddy, what would you like to say? What are something that you get reminded from the past?
I think one of the things that we can learn or do better from the past is, or from our heritage, is to better design our buildings. Most of our buildings are starting to ape the designs from the West, which is not really suitable for many climates or many of the climatic conditions that we have here, right? So if we can go back to those principles, and I just want to underline, Vastu is an overabused word all over the country. So if we can just look at it holistically as a science rather than some kind of a religion that people make it seem to be, then that will make the buildings and through that the lives of people who live within these buildings all the more better. So when we talk about green building, many of those principles enunciated in the green building are typically what Vastu is all about. The placement of the windows, the size of the windows, the positions of the bedrooms for cross ventilation. Many of those that are there as part of the green building norms are already there in our Vastu science. But we don't get to look at that part of the science, but we only start nitpicking and then saying, puja room should be here, it shouldn't really touch, the wall should be this thick, the staircase shouldn't really touch my bedroom. Those kind of small unnecessary things are focused and magnified on, and the bigger scientific principles that are part of Vastu are not really looked into. So the one thing that I think that we should really start talking about, make it big, and then get people to focus on is the actual science in Vastu and not the religious aspect of it. And what I can pick from the West is obviously that nothing should be done in excess, whether it's raising debt, whether it's raising money, whether it's abuse of the environment. Nothing should be done in excess. Anything done in excess, obviously, it's bad, not just for the individual, but for the society at large.
Well, I think that's a very good different pole view. I think retain your originality. We've got so much in abundance. Look inner, look inside, look what we have, and then take it ahead. And I think rightly that, from the West, we need to, and I would quickly take some of the thoughts of Mr. Siddiqui as well.
Well said, Rakesh and Rohit both had covered all the aspects. So just I will summarize what they had told. One thing is we have a heritage, and what we are continuing that heritage, competency level, because I had spent a large amount of my life in Middle East, and in the Middle East, we are the Indians who are doing the most of the iconic projects and all key posts we are at. So the human resource factor in India is very strong, and we can come back with that. Human resource, architects, engineers, laborers, skilled laborers are available here, and they have the competency. So that we should retain, and that will help us in reviving our economy and the real estate sector. And the things to be taken from the West is the correct technologies from the West, like this BIM modeling, Revit modeling, and whatever the technology and the latest things they are doing to customize those all technologies and implement in India, and we can implement it better. In the combination of the heritage and the technology, it will help in overcoming this stress, and it will to achieve the larger goals.
Thank you, Mr. Siddiqui. I think I just my 2 cents on that. I think very well said, Pandit. I think you really covered the entire gamut of strength that we have from the past and also from the West. I think India is a past. I think there is a strong pedigree of relationship and networking that we thrive on. I mean, Indians by virtue. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
I said Indian by virtue thrive on networking, relationship, and we stand for that. That accountability and the ethos, and they are virtually the foundation to whatever we are. And I think from the West, I think it's very important to take that leaf of learning of governance, which I think in our system somewhere there we find a lot of loopholes. Well, Indrajit, over to you and Jayashree.
I guess Lincoln is trying to come in. So Lincoln, if you can. Hello? Lincoln, can you hear us?
Actually, Lincoln can put in the chat so you can read it out, his point of view.
Sure. We'll do that.
Actually, I think that is better.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of disturbance in his line.
Yeah. So we request Lincoln to write on the chat so we can have his views.
Yes. So Jayashree, you can take it ahead. I think you can take the next question. Okay.
All of you are part in all this. All of you are part of some association or other, whether it's CREDA, NERETCO, anything. How are the associations helping developers to sort of to get back on their feet? That's one. And secondly, what will change what has the association or the government foreseen for the real estate segment after this pandemic?
So thanks for that question. So there are a few things to understand. See, when 2008-9 occurred, we came out of it actually quite well because our banking system was insulated from the West. And we didn't really have a subprime loan crisis issue at all because, in fact, people who are buying low-cost homes from Rakesh or from me or from anybody else, we all know that they are actually the best paymasters in the country. So we got out of that Western crisis quite well. The crisis that we face right now is never been seen before by man since probably the Spanish flu. So it's a 1 in a 100-year crisis. Like Mr. Siddiqui mentioned before, all countries in the world are virtually shut. China may have restarted, but now I believe they have a second wave of coronavirus coming back into the country. And Singapore's got 9,000 people, 9,000 cases of coronavirus again, apparently. So this is a global pandemic and a very large global challenge. So just to frame the extent of the issue. The government has to step in to lead the economic revival. Without government intervention, this will not happen. So that's very clear. So whether it is NAREDCO or MCHI or CREDAI or ASSOCHAM or CII or FICCI, they are all saying the same thing. The common consensus amongst these platforms is that we require about 10% of GDP, which is about $200 billion as a total overall stimulus. Now, the government is currently not convinced about this number. And talks are going on between what that number should really be. As you know, in America, the overall number will be probably over 20% of GDP, and most countries in Europe are between 10 and 25% already. And these monies have been paid, whereas in India, the monies have not really. Any businessman hasn't seen the MSME sector or the large-scale economy, the large-scale manufacturers haven't really seen any benefit currently of this. So, what are the asks that we actually have? I think the biggest ask will basically be how can the government spur spending? How can the government ensure job security? And how can loans be restructured on a one-time basis? Because the fact is that this is going to be a reality of life. Okay, the government has said that please don't ask people to leave their jobs, but unfortunately it's already happening across all sectors, as Mr. Rajiv Bajaj said in his interview last night, MD Bajaj Auto, that many of his suppliers have already started relieving people. And he sympathizes with them because of the fact that the sector is basically shrunk. The construction industry has seen a lot of migratory labor go back to their villages. The people who have actually stayed back, who are being paid by people like us and Mr. Siddiqui and Rakesh, will continue to stay because they're able to get money from us and send it to their villages. So to answer one of the questions before, labor will stay on because of the fact that they're actually getting paid from us and they're getting taken care of their food, health, and security. So ultimately speaking, if the government does not step in and prop up the economy, we are going to be in for a difficult time, right? So this is the overall matter. We are in touch with various policymakers as NAREDCO, MCHI, CREDAI on a day-to-day basis, as Mr. Siddiqui already knows. I'm not sure if Rakesh is a member of anything in the South because I'm actually had the pleasure of meeting him for the first time. But many people from Hyderabad and Bangalore are part of NAREDCO and CREDAI as well. And we've made many representations to the Ministry of Housing and Mr. Ministry of Housing. We had a conversation with Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri last week and Durga Shankar Mishra ji. We've also made representations to the PMO's office, to the Economic Council, to the RBI, to the Finance Ministry, to the GST Council, which is a state-led. The states have to make a representation. So this is an ongoing process on a day-to-day basis. I think the government is appraised of this issue. From what I'm told, the next package will be announced very shortly, either this Saturday or Monday. And I hope that it's going to cover the scale of GDP that we are all urging the government to do. Many of the people who are in the part of the Prime Minister's Economic Council who are now abroad, including Mr. Arvind Panagria and the erstwhile governor of the RBI, Raghuram Rajan, have also mentioned that 10% of GDP seems to be about the right number. How this will be done, what will be the modalities, we hope that this happens sooner rather than later, so that we have certainty in what needs to be done. Thank you.
Rajiv, couple of weeks back in one of the webinars, Mr. Deepak Parekh has said that like the developers should try cutting their revenues by 20%, like the sales price by 20%, and offload whatever inventories are there. So, what's your take on that? He also mentioned that the developers should also practice one mantra of compromise, compromise, and compromise. So,
So I
what?
think that to answer your question, we actually had a clarification also. The owner of Prestige from Bangalore actually answered this question while this was. We actually asked Mr. Parekh this question while the webinar was actually going on,
Okay.
so that people don't take this as the gospel truth. See, please understand. By and large, over the last 3 years, there's been a stress in across the industry in India. Now, if you take if you take the top 9 markets in the country, it's 91% of residential demand in the country and also commercial, right?
Correct.
Now, Rakesh happens to be in a sweet spot because of the fact that the global economy has done very well for IT, and a lot of the demand that has been there in Hyderabad has been driven by the IT business, both domestic and international, right?
Right.
That hasn't been the case with many other markets. There's been a severe case of oversupply in Noida, as you know, and there's been a cooling off in the Gurugram market. So NCR has basically been a problem. Mumbai has been has had issues because of the fact that you've had so many regulations that keep changing one after the other over the last 3 years, right?
Correct.
So the bottom line is that I don't expect there to be any correction in the affordable housing market at all. In fact, 0%. The reason is that basically whatever has happened now in COVID will increase prices. If you're going in for a moratorium of your loans, remember that it's not a free. No one's giving you free money. You have to catch up on the morat in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and if you restructure your loan, the loan has to be basically paid back. So no one is giving you a discount on your IRR expectation or basically the interest on your term loan or on a working capital amount. So in fact, you have extra burden of interest over the next 6, 9, 12 months, right? So costs are going to basically go up for sure. You've had labor sitting on the sites over the last 1 month. Mr. Reddy's had 5,000 labor to basically take care of. It's an enormous amount of people, right? As an ethical developer, he's taken care of all their needs. How do you expect him to get his money back, right? Is he going to? So ultimately speaking, this has to come from somewhere, and the math will not add up. So already people have got working on 7-8% margins for in affordable housing, and there's no question of a 20% reduction in affordable housing at all. So let's be clear on this. Where is there an oversupply? There is an oversupply in so-called micro markets in the luxury space, and that too in some micro markets. Rustomji may have a luxury project, for example, in Kalanagar, in next to Bandra, and they may not have, because of the nature of the micro market, they may not have any demand supply aberration, and they may be able to sell out of that project very well. But if you're in the worldly market, for example, or Mahalakshmi, there's a 4, 5, 6 time oversupply. So if some developers are in that micro market, then there'll be a bloodbath and there's going to be a price correction for sure. Because if you're sitting on inventory, there's a saying that inventory killed more Jews than Adolf Hitler. So basically inventory is going to kill us if we don't sell it, and that's what he wanted to actually speak about. That in sectors where you have an OC and the building is ready and the flats are ready, please liquidate your inventory so that you don't have a debt trap. Now, Mr. Reddy will also tell you, and so will Mr. Siddiqui. Mr. Siddiqui has the same lender as us, which is HDFC Capital, for long-term growth, and their project in Virar has done very, very well. And I can tell you for a fact they have no unsold inventory which has an OC, and neither does Podar Housing anywhere in its projects. And I suspect, based on what Mr. Reddy has said, neither does he. If you take the top 20 developers in India for affordable housing, who are all basically financed by HDFC Capital and ADIA, and I can tell you for a fact that very few of them will have any inventory whatsoever. We are all selling and then constructing. So the question of affordable housing prices coming down is an oxymoron in itself, because you can't have inventory if you don't build it. So this is the scenario. So just to clarify to viewers who are seeing this, and also for you, if anybody asks you this question, this is where things stand. Now, for affordable housing, what is the definition? It's 45 lakhs and below as per the Government of India definition. In Mumbai, it goes to 50-55 lakhs. Mr. Parekh said anything below 2 crores in Mumbai will not see anything significant in terms of revenue loss. So if you're selling a flat for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 crores, then those are the pain points. Luxury will be of a different price point in Hyderabad. It may be 3, 4, 5 crore rupees. Mr. Reddy is selling below 1 crore, 1.2 crores. So that's really someone making 18, 20 lakh rupees a year or 24 lakh rupees a year can easily afford to buy one of his apartments. So therefore, it's 4 times their single household income. Many people who are working in the IT industry have dual income. So I think if you take 4.5 times the combined household income, many people can afford a 1.5 crore rupee house in the Hyderabad or South Indian market, which is an IT-driven space. And similarly for I don't want to speak for Mr. Siddiqui, he can answer himself, but many locations that Rustomjee has are similar ticket sizes. So I don't think that they'll be reducing prices, certainly in the sub 2 crore rupee category. Thank you.
Yeah, Rohit, while you were answering this question, like there are a lot of questions that are pop up related to the same. People are asking if you are like going to increase the prices, or if the prices goes up, how are you going to retain customers or attract customers while people are losing jobs? There are salary cuts, there is cash flow issues. So how are you going to attract customers to your projects to buy your unsold inventory?
That's right. So the point is that whatever is your current book and whatever customers you actually have right now who have not registered their apartments, what is the value proposition to them, right? So they must also understand that whatever they bought was of significant value 4 weeks back, and hence will be of significant value 4 weeks later. There is no logic that says that what was a good value proposition 4 weeks back is now a piece of toilet paper, right? This I don't buy this argument at all. It is a doomsday philosophy, and whatever, and as Sadhguruji said, this too shall pass. So basically, if you ask any person in the church or in a mosque or any imam or any spiritual person, they will tell you that time heals all wounds, and this too shall pass. So in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, we will be asking the question as to why the house wasn't bought today, and why they're buying a house 6 months later when the prices have actually gone up, right? So my view is that the value proposition has to be something for the customer that has to be attractive yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So like I said, if you look at the prices of Rustomjee or Podar in the micro markets of Virar and basically Badlapur or Kalyan or Thane, then the value proposition that existed 4 weeks back very much exists today. First point. Second point, a person who's buying a house who's basically got a job, he'll be taking a mortgage or a home loan for sure. Today you have mortgages at a historic low of 7.5, 7.6% and moving south. So I would recommend to any home buyer, please do not take a fixed home rate for a mortgage. Please take a flexi rate, because there's a significant chance that you'll have a 50, 60, 70 basis points reduction also in this. Third point is, since coronavirus offices will start, post the 3rd of May or at some point in the foreseeable future. The question is, what is it that you can do, and what is it that the actual developer can do to help you through this difficult time? I'm sure there'll be a conversation between you and the developer. I don't see prices coming down. I don't see prices going up. So I think developers will help you over this difficult time. They will absorb, by and large, the losses that they've incurred over the last 1.5 months, which are severe. Please remember, they're servicing interest costs. They're paying all their staff and salaries. They're paying the G&A expenses. They're paying their rents. They're basically paying the labor on site, food. All these are expensive costs, right? So cost may go up by 10%. But I think developers will help out customers, and there's a need for India, and they will not increase prices for the immediate term. At least for customers that have paid tokens, I can say that most of the people that we know in the Mumbai market will not increase prices. I think ethical developers will not increase prices across India and help the customers in need. But expecting a price reduction simply won't happen because costs have gone up. And I would urge customers to take a view of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and not panic in this pandemic, because, like I said, this too shall pass. Last time we had H1N1 and SARS, it didn't really affect us as a nation. A vaccination is not very far away. Bill Gates, if you are to believe what he has to say, then he thinks that a vaccination may come out as early as this September, and if not by October for sure. So on what basis the government can help in getting us immunized as a country remains to be seen. I'm sure they will try their best with the Prime Minister that we have, who deeply cares about the well-being of the entire population of the country, especially the poor and lower middle class. And I'm sure that he will do whatever best he can to make sure that we have the vaccination available in mass scale as soon as possible. Once that happens, then we are back to business as usual. And remember, 10% stimulus, or 8% or 7%, how much ever that figure is a significant value. Inflation may rise, but remember, inflation is currently at an all-time low. So I think that the government will bite the bullet, and they will give a large stimulus and encourage spending. And I think that this will kickstart the economy sooner rather than later. So I would just request you all to take a deep breath and to stay home, to stay safe. And like I said, this too shall pass. In 6 months' time, when we're talking again, hopefully in the webinar, you will accept that I'll be right, not because I'm right, because this is how the circle of life actually works.
Sure. Mr. Siddiqui, would you like to take this further?
Actually, very well explained by Rohit, very well explained, and whatever all in my mind he has already explained. Just I want to add one thing into that. Earlier, maybe 10 years, 12 years before, that was the perception when I am buying a property today at lower price, and then by next month it will be double, or in 1 month, in 1 year or 2 years, the prices will be doubled. But from the last 6, 7, 8 years, we are seeing the prices are, or 5 years, we are seeing the prices are stable. It is not like that. But this crisis has given a message to everybody that this real estate investment is stable, not like the mutual funds. And we are running the real estate, not like a oil business. Now oil is below 20 and in US it is negative. But real estate is the use-based commodity. And this Rohit had rightly said, the lowering of the prices is not an option. But one thing I can tell to all who are audience and the buyers, that there may be developers will have a value addition, whatever we had learned from this crisis, and whatever we can improve in our projects, and at the, like I mentioned before, some retail spaces we can add, some touchless solutions we can add to that, some good access control, and all other small features can be added and value addition to the projects.
Correct. Rakesh, in case if you want to add something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the point. Do I need to add anything more? I mean, Rohit has really spoken quite a bit on that subject.
Perfect.
The only point I would like to make is, in India, the only two things that people trust and invest in most is gold and real estate. So, and right now, these are the only two asset classes that seem to be performing in this market. If you see where the stock market is going in the last couple of weeks or so, I mean, that's a silver lining at the end of the day for developers as well. When things are tough, people always come back to what they're comfortable
Real
with,
estate, correct.
which is again real estate and gold.
Lincoln, what I would like to ask you is, how is the private equity seen in, in South? I mean, Goa, the market where you operate, because private equity plays a major role in these markets. You know, whether it's Bombay or it's Goa, it's Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore. How is the scene there?
I would think maybe in Goa we're going to see it continuing just the way how it was. In fact, Rohit explained on a very large platform. He explained most likely all the points covered up. Private equity, I don't think it's still going to remain same. It's going to increase better. I would think we don't see much fluctuation in that. We don't see a dip or something. But in fact, we're going to see it progressing further on, especially for Goa, for the luxury market per se. I can't say much for the mid-segment housing, but at least for the luxury segment, I would think it should pick up in pace.
Jayashree, if I can just add to this point, you have, as Mr. Siddiqui said, oil was basically being sold at a negative price by the oil companies, some oil companies in America, right? If you look at global interest rates right now, they are at a rate even lower than 2008-9, right? India has, amongst the countries that we're talking about, BRIC and all, the highest real interest rate on earth, right? Why would capital that is in effect coming at for free at 0% not come to a country which has 1.3 billion people, real consumption, and the highest effective rate of interest on earth, right? Only a stupid person would not come to this country, right? So let me tell you what is my view of the fact. You will have people coming to India in droves. They will put suitcases full of money and they'll come, okay? Because they all want to make money. The question will become, when will they come? Under what conditions will they come? And what will be their expected return? Okay. Please understand, the US economy is expected to shrink by 10% this year. Now, when an economy in double-digit trillions shrinks by 10%, that means the economy will shrink the size of the Indian economy, right? So the shrinkage in the American economy will be the size of the entire Indian economy. It's an enormous number. Think of the Indian economy becoming zero, right? Of all the value of transactions becoming basically zero. It's impossible to fathom, right? So please, so they will basically come when they understand what is the impact of coronavirus in India, and have we basically managed to flatten the curve and by and large not be affected by the pandemic in the manner in which the WHO had predicted. Please remember 1 month back when people went to the Prime Minister's office begging him to basically close the country. The best case scenario, as per all our medical pundits, was that we will have between 100 million and 300 million people affected by coronavirus. This is less than 5 weeks back, right? All the figures that we were being told, all across the internet, all across the WhatsApp chats, all across Telegram, all across the news channels. So we are nowhere near 300 million people. Even if you take asymptomatic cases being whatever they are, they're not currently measured. But we're nowhere near this. We're nowhere near this figure. And international opinion is that we may have beaten the worst of the pandemic if we don't see a spike in the next 4 or 5 weeks, right? Of course, now there was a big scare because people came from Delhi and they said that we're expecting some crazy amount of people in Mumbai over the next 3.5 weeks. Whether that happens or doesn't happen, it remains to be seen, and the jury's out on that, and time will tell. But the moment the West understands, or we prove as a country that the pandemic hasn't hit us very badly, people will come into India in droves. Okay, and basically the money will be welcome. We just hope that by then there is enough of a package to save our industry, because otherwise we'll be selling ourselves to save the industry. So we don't want to do that, right? You don't want people to come in and buy businesses that people have built up over decades, which are actually good businesses, for 10 cents to the dollar. And that is my concern. If the government does not step in and give us this package, then we will be doing exactly that. We'll be selling ourselves to save ourselves, which should not happen. But the reality is that the money will basically come. And I expect a significant amount of money to come in by starting October of this year.
Would anybody like to add anything to this, or shall we? Would we like to end the session? I mean, Indrajit, would you have any questions to ask from the public?
Yeah, there are a lot of questions from the public, though. Just give me a moment.
Take something that is not been spoken about.
Whatever Rohit has told us, and very realistic, and he has a very this analytical approach, and he has the data to back up what he is telling. I'm very happy that I want to add one thing to this what Rohit is telling. It is absolutely correct, and I am also getting calls from the US, UK, my friends who are doing business over there and in Dubai. So many people are thinking of shifting of their business and more chunk to the Indian market. And so far, up till now, we had done very good in combating this COVID-19. Thanks, Rohit, for sharing these positive thoughts with the real data. Really, we are very thankful to Rohit.
I think gentlemen and Jayashree there. Sorry, Indrajit, you are saying something?
Yeah.
You're saying something, Indrajit?
Relating to the Hyderabad market, Jagdish Kumar had a question. So in case if Mr. Reddy would like to answer this. Hyderabad has been in the forefront of IT development of late. Do you see the same momentum continuing post the pandemic?
Yeah. So I would say that because there are other sectors that IT companies can address and will address for their growth. For example, utility segment that will see a surge in usage. That will again require IT intervention from the insurance segment, from the banking segment because of digitalization of services, from hospital segment, again, for them to be prepared for this kind of pandemics in the future, upgradation of all the necessary infrastructure at the back end. So all of these sectors are there ripe for growth for the IT industry. So I would see the momentum continuing. I mean, a month or 2 or 3 wouldn't really stop what's been built over the last 15-20 years.
So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for, that was great inputs, great insights. Also, Indrajit, would you like to end the session with a few closing points?
I guess Vibhor has something to say.
I think the Rohit had a very high point, and that's the time when I thought we will conclude that the people will come with truckloads of money. The whole India is, open to welcome them. I think that was really the high point, and I think that's a very encouraging thing. I think we lost Rohit, I think. But I think that's where we want to close. I think the whole panelists have really covered it well. So Rohit, I was just saying that was the high point. We really are welcoming with open arms all the investors coming with truckloads of money. And I think this country has always been there to absorb, accommodate, collaborate, ideate together, like how this brilliant panel is doing right away. And I think at Construction Week, Jayashree and Indrajit, my colleagues, we are extremely thankful to you and all our viewers there. And sorry, folks, there were many questions that keep rolling in, but I'm sure you will get to hear from us. I think that's it from our side. And thanks once again, everybody, for being with us.
Just an announcement that we are rolling out this webinar series. So we have a webinar scheduled tomorrow and day after as well. So stay tuned to our websites and like our social media channels to know more about it. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Thank you all the audience.
Thanks, Arunji. Thanks, Rakesh.
We'll also send you the link.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohit.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Indrajit. Thanks, Jayashree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Jayashree and Indrajit.
Thank you.
Thank you.